The heart monitor was the only sound in the room. Beep, beep, beep. Rose was holding 3 tiny crying babies, her body broken and exhausted, waiting for her husband to kiss her forehead. Instead, Davis, the CEO of Vance Global, checked his Rolex, tossed a manila envelope onto the hospital bed, and said the coldest words a new mother could hear. "Sign this, Rose. You've served your purpose. It's over." He walked out, leaving her penniless with 3 newborns. Or so he thought. He didn't check his email. If he had, he would have seen the notification that just minutes ago, she didn't just inherit a fortune. She became his boss. This is the story of how her husband ruined his life, exactly 5 minutes after she gave birth. The sterile air of the VIP maternity suite at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City felt colder than a winter storm. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights shimmered, indifferent to the devastation unfolding inside room 402. Rose Vance, 26 years old and trembling with a mixture of postpartum exhaustion and adrenaline, looked down at the 3 bundles in her arms: Leo, Noah, and little Sophie. Triplets. They were miracles. She had just performed a physiological feat that should have earned her a medal. But when she looked up, expecting to see pride in her husband's eyes, she found only the flat, dead stare of a shark. Davis Vance stood at the foot of the bed. He was immaculate in his charcoal Brioni suit, not a hair out of place. He looked like what he was, the ruthless CEO of Vance Global, a logistics conglomerate worth millions. He didn't look like a father. He looked like he was closing a deal that had gone on too long. "Davis?" Rose whispered, her throat dry. "Do you want to hold them? Sophie has your nose." Davis didn't move. He reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick document. He threw it onto the bed. It landed with a heavy thud next to Noah's tiny, swaddled feet. "I need you to sign on page 12, Davis said, his voice devoid of any inflection. "And page 14 initiates the NDA. You can't discuss our marriage with the press." Rose blinked, the world tilting on its axis. "What? What is this?" "Divorce papers, Rose, obviously." He checked his watch, a platinum Patek Philippe that cost more than the house Rose grew up in. "My driver is outside. You have the apartment in Queens until the end of the month. After that, you're on your own. I've arranged for a modest stipend for the children. It's generous, considering you brought nothing to this marriage." "Modest stipend." Rose's voice cracked. She tried to shift, but the pain from the C-section flared, sharp and hot. "Davis, I just gave birth 10 minutes ago. These are your children. We're a family." Davis let out a short, derisive laugh. He stepped closer, leaning in so she could smell his expensive cologne, Santal 30 and the scent of betrayal. "We were a deeply calculated arrangement, Rose. I needed a wholesome image to secure the merger with the Nordic partners. They value family men. That deal closed yesterday. And frankly," he sneered, looking around the room, "your background, it doesn't fit where I'm going next. I need a power couple image, not a waitress from a diner in Ohio." "I was a scholarship student at Columbia when we met," Rose countered, tears finally spilling over. "I wasn't just a waitress." "You were a nobody," Davis spat. "And now, you're a nobody with 3 anchors tied to her ankles. Sign the papers. Don't make me drag this out in court. You can't afford a lawyer who can even pronounce my attorney's name." He turned his back on her. "My lawyer, Mr. Sterling, will collect the papers in an hour. Goodbye, Rose." The door clicked shut. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Rose looked down at her babies. They were sleeping, blissfully unaware that their father had just discarded them like last season's inventory. Panic began to rise in her chest, a cold, gripping terror. She had no savings. She had signed a prenup she hadn't read properly because she was blinded by love. She was alone in New York City with 3 infants. But then, a vibration buzzed against her hip. Her old cracked iPhone was glowing on the bedside table. It wasn't a text from a friend. It was an email notification. The subject line was in bold red letters, urgent. Finalization of the Harrington Estate Trust. Rose froze. Harrington. That was her mother's maiden name. Her mother, who had died in a car crash when Rose was a baby, leaving her to be raised by a distant aunt in Ohio, who never spoke of the past. She reached for the phone with a trembling hand. She opened the email. It was from a law firm in London, Wellington, Clark and Associates. Dear Mrs. Vance, we write to you with solemn news and urgent business. As per the last will and testament of your grandfather, Lord Alistair Harrington, the 4th Earl of Locksley, and founder of Harrington Shipping and Logistics, you have been identified as the sole surviving heir. Lord Harrington passed away this morning at 04 Rushausedoro GMT. He regretfully lost contact with your mother decades ago, but his investigators located you 3 months ago. He instructed us to release the trust to you only upon his death. The estate includes the Harrington Manor in Surrey, the Manhattan penthouse on 5th Avenue, and a 51% controlling stake in Harrington Shipping. Furthermore, we must inform you that Harrington Shipping recently acquired a majority debt position in a company called Vance Global. Effectively, Mrs. Vance, you are now the primary creditor of your husband's company. Please contact us immediately. Rose read the email 3 times. The tears on her cheeks stopped. The terror in her chest evaporated, replaced by something much hotter. Something that felt like steel. Davis thought she was a nobody from Ohio. He didn't know she was the granddaughter of the man who owned the ships his company relied on to survive. She looked at the divorce papers. Then she looked at the babies. Don't worry, she whispered to little Leo, kissing his forehead. Daddy thinks he's a king. He's about to find out he's just the jester. The next 3 days in the hospital were a blur of nurses, feedings, and secret phone calls. While Davis was likely popping champagne with his business partners, or perhaps his new mistress, a rumor Rose had tried to ignore for months, Rose was orchestrating a war. She didn't sign the divorce papers. Not yet. Instead, she summoned Wellington, Clark, and Associates. When Arthur Clark, the senior partner, walked into her hospital room, he didn't look at her like a discarded wife. He bowed his head. Lady Rose, he said, using a title she didn't even know she had. It is an honor. Arthur was a man in his 60s, sharp as a tack, with the kind of British accent that commanded respect. He sat by her bed, opening a briefcase that made Davis's look like a cheap knockoff. The portfolio is vast, Arthur explained, laying out documents. Your grandfather was eccentric, but brilliant. He regretted casting your mother out for marrying an American artist. He spent his final years watching you from afar. He knew about Davis. He knew about the way you were treated. He knew? Rose asked, rocking Sophie. Lord Harrington had extensive surveillance, Arthur said delicately. He knew Davis Vance is over-leveraged. He borrowed heavily from the Harrington Trust to expand into Asia. If you call in that debt, Vance Global goes bankrupt within 48 hours. Rose ran a finger over the document. I don't want to bankrupt the company, she said softly. Hundreds of innocent people work there. Families. I don't want to destroy the company, Arthur. Arthur raised an eyebrow. Then what is your command? Rose's eyes hardened. I want to own it. I want to control it. And I want Davis to keep his job, just long enough to realize who holds his leash." Arthur smiled, a thin, predatory smile. "A hostile takeover from the inside. Very good. We can convert the debt into equity. By Monday morning, you will own 65% of Vance Global." "Do it," Rose said, "but keep my name off the public filings for now. Use a shell company. Call it the Triad Trust." "For the Triplets," Arthur noted. "Poetic." "And Arthur, one more thing." "Yes, my lady?" "Get me out of this hospital. Not to the apartment in Queens. Take me to the penthouse on 5th Avenue. 4 hours later, Davis Vance's phone rang while he was at a steakhouse in Midtown, laughing with his VP of Operations, a sycophant named Greg. "Vance here," Davis answered, swirling his scotch. "Mr. Vance, this is hospital administration," a nervous voice said. "We wanted to inform you that your wife, your ex-wife, has discharged herself." "Good," Davis said, indifferent. "Did she take the Uber I called?" No, sir. A helicopter picked her up from the roof." Davis froze, his glass halting halfway to his mouth. "A helicopter? What are you talking about? She doesn't have money for a cab, let alone a chopper." "It was a private medical transport, sir. The tail number was registered to, well, it was obscured. But the security detail was immense. They cleared the whole roof." Davis hung up, frowning. "Weird," he muttered. "Trouble with the old ball and chain?" Greg asked, cutting into his ribeye. "She's gone," Davis said, shaking off the unease. "Probably found some charity case organization to pity her. Doesn't matter. She signed the papers?" "My lawyer is checking now," Davis said. He felt a sudden ping of anxiety, but crushed it. He was the CEO of Vance Global. He was untouchable. Rose stepped out of the private elevator into the penthouse. It was a palace in the sky. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park. The staff was already lined up. A nanny, a chef, a housekeeper, all hired by the Harrington estate. "Welcome home, ma'am," the head butler said. Rose walked to the window. She was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, holding a baby. But she felt different. She felt powerful. She looked down at the city. Somewhere down there, Davis was probably celebrating his freedom. She picked up her phone and dialed Davis. He answered on the second ring, sounding annoyed. "Rose? I told you to contact my lawyer. I'm in a meeting." "I just wanted to say thank you, Davis," Rose said, her voice calm and cool. "Thank you." "For what?" "For the motivation," she said. "Oh, and you might want to check the company directory on Monday morning. There are going to be some changes in the board of directors." "What are you babbling about? You're delusional. Go to Queens, Rose." Click. He hung up. Rose smiled. She turned to the nanny, a kind-faced woman named Sarah. "Sarah, please take the children to the nursery. I have work to do. I need to learn how to run a logistics empire by Monday." "Of course, ma'am," Sarah said. Rose walked into the massive office at the end of the hall. On the desk sat a laptop and a stack of files Arthur had left. She sat in the leather chair. It was bigger than Davis's. "Okay," she whispered to the empty room. "Let's play." Monday morning arrived with a torrential downpour in Manhattan, matching the storm brewing inside the boardroom of Vance Global. Davis Vance strode out of the elevator on the 40th floor, shaking his umbrella with irritation. He was in a foul mood. The weekend had been unsettling. His calls to his lawyers to confirm Rose had vacated the Queen's apartment had gone to voicemail. He hated loose ends, and Rose was becoming a loose end. "Greg!" Davis barked as he walked past his assistant's desk. "Get me a coffee. Black. And get Sterling on the phone. I want to know why the divorce papers haven't been countersigned yet." Greg, usually eager to please, didn't jump up. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Greg?" "Sir," Greg stammered, standing up slowly. You need to go to the conference room immediately. The board is there." "The board?" Davis frowned. "The quarterly review isn't until next month. Who called a meeting?" "They did, sir. The new majority shareholders." Davis felt a cold prickle on the back of his neck. "What new shareholders?" "We're a private entity, Greg. I hold the majority voting stock." "Not anymore, sir. Please, just go in." Davis straightened his tie, composed his face into a mask of arrogant indifference, and pushed open the double-glass doors of the boardroom. The room was full. The usual board members, mostly old men Davis had bullied into submission for years, were sitting in silence, looking nervous. But at the head of the table, in Davis's chair, sat a man Davis had never seen before. It was Arthur Clarke. The British lawyer looked entirely at ease, sipping tea from a delicate china cup that definitely didn't come from the office break room. "Excuse me," Davis said, his voice booming. "You're in my seat." Arthur Clarke looked up slowly. He didn't stand. He simply gestured to the empty chair at the side of the table, the spot usually reserved for the secretary taking minutes. "Mr. Vance," Arthur said, his voice smooth as velvet but hard as iron. "Please, sit down. We have much to discuss regarding the restructuring of our company." "Who the hell are you?" Davis demanded, his face turning red. "Security." "Security works for us now," Arthur said calmly. He slid a single sheet of paper across the mahogany table. "As of 8:00 a.m. this morning, the debt Vance Global owed to Horrington Shipping, specifically the $200 million bridge loan you took out to acquire the Asian distribution hubs, was called in." "That loan wasn't due for 5 years," Davis shouted. "Read the fine print, Mr. Vance. Section 4, paragraph B. The lender reserves the right to call the full principal immediately upon any material change in the borrower's leadership stability or at the lender's discretion." Arthur smiled. "We exercised our discretion. Since your company lacks the liquidity to pay, we have exercised the convertible equity clause. The Triad Trust now owns 65% of Vance Global. We are your boss." Davis snatched the paper. His eyes scanned the legal jargon. It was airtight. He looked around the table at the other board members. "You let this happen?" he hissed at them. "We didn't have a choice, Davis," one of the members mumbled. "They have the capital. We were bankrupt without them." Davis slumped into the side chair, the fight draining out of him. "Who is the Triad Trust? Who is behind this?" Arthur clasped his hands. "The beneficiary prefers to remain anonymous for the time being. They are observing your performance." "So you're firing me?" Davis asked, bracing for the blow. "Oh no," Arthur said, his eyes twinkling with a cruelty Davis couldn't quite place. "The beneficiary was very specific. They want you to stay on as CEO. They believe your unique style is entertaining. However, there are conditions." "Conditions?" "First," Arthur listed, raising a finger, "your salary is cut by 60%, effective immediately." Davis choked. "That barely covers my mortgage." "Second, the corporate jet is sold. You will fly commercial, economy class." "You can't be serious." "Third, all executive expenses must be approved by me personally. No more dinners at Le Bernardin. No more consulting fees to your mistress, Miss Isabella Rossini." "Yes, we know about her on the payroll." Davis went white. "And finally," Arthur said, leaning in, "the beneficiary wants you to launch the new Family First initiative. You will be the face of a campaign promoting parental leave, childcare support, and work-life balance." The irony was palpable. Davis, the man who divorced his wife minutes after she gave birth, was being forced to champion family values. "This is humiliation," Davis whispered. "No, Mr. Vance," Arthur said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. "This is business. You have a quarterly gala in 4 weeks. The beneficiary expects record numbers. Don't disappoint us." Arthur walked out, leaving Davis sitting in the subordinate chair, trembling with rage. He pulled out his phone. He needed to scream at someone. He dialed Rose's number. He wanted to tell her this was all her fault somehow, that her bad luck had infected him. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Davis threw his phone against the wall. It shattered. 4 weeks later, the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was dripping with crystals and orchids. It was the night of the Vance Global Innovation Gala. Davis Vance stood by the entrance, forcing a smile as photographers flashed their bulbs. He looked tired. The last month had been hell. He was flying coach, eating salads from the cafeteria, and every purchase over $50 required him to fill out a form that Arthur Clarke would scrutinize. Hanging on his arm was Isabella Rossini. She was 22, a model with ambitions that outweighed her patience. She was wearing a silver dress that left little to the imagination, but she looked bored. "Davis, stop sweating," she hissed. "You're ruining the photo." "Shut up, Bella," Davis muttered. "Do you know how much rides on tonight? If we don't secure the Japanese investors, the board will have my head." "Maybe if you bought me the diamond bracelet I asked for, I'd be more supportive," she pouted. "I told you my accounts are under audit," Davis lied. The room was buzzing. The elite of New York were there. Tech moguls, politicians, old money families. Davis scanned the room, looking for Arthur Clarke. The lawyer was there, standing near the bar, watching Davis like a hawk. Then a hush fell over the room. It started at the main entrance, a sudden silence that rippled through the crowd like a wave. The photographers stopped shouting and simply stared. Davis turned to see what was happening. Descending the grand staircase was a woman. She was wearing a deep crimson gown, made of silk that flowed like liquid fire. It was elegant, regal, and undoubtedly custom-made by a master couturier. Diamonds sparkled at her throat and ears, heavy antique stones that caught the light with a blue fire. Her hair was swept up in a sophisticated chignon, revealing a long, graceful neck. She looked like a queen arriving to address her subjects. Davis squinted. There was something familiar about the walk, the poise. The woman reached the bottom of the stairs and turned. The light hit her face. Davis's jaw dropped. His glass of champagne slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. It was Rose. But it wasn't the Rose he knew. The tired, pregnant woman in oversized maternity clothes, smelling of baby powder and exhaustion. This woman radiated power. Her skin glowed. Her eyes were sharp and clear. "No," Davis whispered. "That's impossible." "Who is that?" Isabella asked, jealousy dripping from her voice. Rose moved through the crowd. People parted for her. She didn't look lost or timid. She stopped to speak to the Japanese delegation, the very investors Davis was desperate to impress. Davis watched in horror as Rose bowed perfectly and began speaking to them. He could hear the cadence. She was speaking fluent Japanese. "Since when does she speak Japanese?" Davis muttered, his mind racing. "She's from Ohio." Unable to control himself, Davis shoved past a waiter and marched toward her. He had to stop this charade. She must have crashed the party. She was probably here to beg for money or cause a scene. "Rose!" he hissed, grabbing her elbow as she finished her conversation with the investors. The investors looked shocked at his rudeness. Rose turned slowly. She looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Her expression was one of mild amusement. "Mr. Vance?" she said coolly. You're wrinkling the silk. What the hell are you doing here? Davis whispered furiously. How did you get in? Security! He waved at a guard. Get this woman out of here. She's an uninvited guest. The security guard, a large man named Tiny, who had worked at the building for years, stepped forward. He looked at Davis, then at Rose. I'm sorry, Mr. Vance, the guard said. I can't do that. What do you mean you can't? I'm the CEO. And this is Lady Rose Harrington, the guard said respectfully. She's the guest of honor. Davis froze. Lady... Who? Rose smiled. She leaned in close, so only he could hear. Harrington. Davis. You know, Harrington Shipping, the company that owns your debt, the company that owns you. Davis felt the blood drain from his face. The pieces slammed together. The triad trust. The sudden changes. The torture he had endured for the last month. You? He choked out. You are the beneficiary? Technically, Rose said, brushing a speck of dust off his lapel. The beneficiary is the trust set up for Leo, Noah, and Sophie. My children. Your children. The ones you discarded. She stepped back, raising her voice slightly so the nearby investors could hear. Mr. Vance, I was just telling Mr. Yamamoto about your fascinating new strategy for family leave. I'm sure you're eager to donate your annual bonus to the Triplets charity fund, aren't you? Davis opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Isabella, sensing the power shift, stepped up. Who does she think she is? She sneered at Rose. You're just the ex-wife. Rose looked at Isabella with pity. And you must be the line item on the expense report. Consulting fees, was it? I'm afraid we cut that budget line this morning. You might want to check your credit card, dear. It's likely been declined. Isabella gasped. She pulled out her phone and checked her banking app. Her face went pale. She looked at Davis with pure venom. You broke, lying loser, she screamed and stormed off. The room was staring. Davis wished the floor would open up and swallow him. Rose turned back to him. Her eyes were cold. Enjoy the party, Davis, she said. Don't drink too much. You have an early performance review with me tomorrow morning, and bring coffee. I take it with oat milk now. She turned and walked away, the red dress trailing behind her like a pool of blood from a fresh kill. Davis stood alone in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by the empire he thought was his, realizing he was nothing more than a servant in his ex-wife's kingdom. The morning after the gala, the headlines were not what Davis Vance had hoped for. He sat in his office, which now felt more like a cage, staring at the New York Post. Mystery Iris stuns at Vance. Gala, CEO sidelined by ex-wife. There was a photo of Rose in her red dress, looking regal, while Davis looked sweaty and panicked in the background. The article speculated on his demotion, his breakup with Isabella, who had already given a tell-all quote about his cheapness, and the sudden shift in power at Vance Global. Davis crumpled the paper. Rage, hot and blinding, pulsed behind his eyes. He had built this company. He was the face of the brand. And now, the woman he had discarded like trash was sitting in the penthouse he coveted, holding his purse strings. But Davis Vance was a survivor, and survivors played dirty. His office door opened, and a man walked in. This wasn't Arthur Clarke or the company lawyers. This was Miles Thorne. Thorne was a fixer, a lawyer who specialized in high-conflict divorces for the ultra-rich. He was known as the Butcher of Broadway because he carved up families for sport. You look like hell, Davis, Thorne said, tossing a briefcase onto the desk. She humiliated me, Miles, Davis seethed. She owns the debt. She owns the shares. She has me by the throat. I have to quit. Quit? Thorne laughed, a dry, rattling sound. And walk away with nothing? Don't be an idiot. You don't walk away from a billion-dollar table just because you lost a hand. What leverage do I have? She's the creditor." Thorne walked to the window and looked out. "I did some digging into this Triad Trust. It's an irrevocable trust set up by Lord Harrington. The beneficiaries are Leo, Noah, and Sophie Vance." "My children," Davis muttered. "Exactly. Rose is merely the trustee until they turn 21. "But," Thorne turned, a wicked glint in his eye, "courts don't like unstable trustees, especially not new mothers who flee hospitals against medical advice, hop into helicopters and hide children from their father." Davis sat up straighter. "Go on." "We file for emergency full custody," Thorne said. "We paint a narrative. You are the stable, successful CEO. She is the erratic, postpartum depressed runaway who kidnapped your children. We claim she is alienating you from them. If the court grants you custody, you become the guardian of the beneficiaries. You control the voting rights of the trust." Davis smiled. It was a cold, reptilian smile. "So I get the kids and I get my company back?" "You get everything," Thorne confirmed. "But we need to move fast. We need to destroy her reputation before she cements herself as the savior of the company. We need to make her look crazy." Rose was in the middle of a strategy meeting with the Asian logistics team when her assistant, a young woman named Chloe, burst into the room. "Mom, I'm so sorry to interrupt," Chloe said, her voice trembling. "But you need to see the TV. It's the Daily Mail live." Rose frowned and grabbed the remote. She turned on the large screen on the wall. There, standing outside the courthouse, was Davis. He was wearing a casual sweater, looking disheveled and distraught, a carefully crafted performance. Microphones were shoved in his face. "I just want my babies back," Davis was saying to the cameras, forcing a tear to roll down his cheek. "Rose, she's not well. She had a breakdown after the birth. She disappeared with Leo, Noah, and Sophie. I haven't seen them in a month. I'm worried about their safety. She has a history of instability. I'm pleading with the courts to intervene before something tragic happens." Rose dropped the remote. The room went silent. "He's lying," she whispered. "He threw divorce papers at me in the recovery room." "The narrative is already spreading," Chloe said, scrolling through Twitter on her tablet. "Save the Triplets is trending. People think you kidnapped them." Before Rose could process the betrayal, the double doors of the conference room swung open. Davis walked in, flanked by 2 police officers and Miles Thorne. "Rose Vance," Thorne announced, his voice booming. "You are served." He slapped a thick stack of papers onto the conference table. "Emergency custody order," Thorne declared. "Pending a psychiatric evaluation of the mother, the court has granted temporary custody of the minors to the father, Mr. Davis Vance. You have 1 hour to surrender the children." Rose stood up, her hands shaking. "You can't be serious. He abandoned them. He didn't even want to hold them." "That's not what the affidavit says," Davis said softly, stepping closer. He looked at her with faux concern. "Rose, honey, you're hysterical. See? This is exactly what I told the judge. You need help." "Get out!" Rose hissed. "Get out of my building." "Actually," Davis smirked, leaning in so only she could hear, "since the children are the majority shareholders, and I am now their legal guardian, I speak for the shares. Technically, this is my building again." He checked his watch. "I'll be at the penthouse in an hour to collect Leo, Noah, and Sophie. Pack their things. And Rose, don't try to run. The police are watching the exits." Davis turned and walked out, the police following him. Rose collapsed into a chair. The executives around the table looked at her with a mix of pity and suspicion. Davis's performance had been convincing. Even her own employees were wondering if the crazy ex-wife story was true. Arthur Clarke, who had been silent in the corner, stood up. His face was grim. "They played a dirty hand, Lady Rose," Arthur said. "The family man play. It's the one thing the Harrington lawyers didn't anticipate, Davis actually wanting the children." "He doesn't want them," Rose cried, tears streaming down her face. "He wants the voting rights. He'll stick them with a nanny and never look at them again. I can't let him take them, Arthur. They're only a month old." "If you refuse the court order, you go to jail," Arthur warned. "And then he wins permanently? So I just hand them over?" "No," Arthur said, pulling out his phone. "We escalate. Davis wants a war in the press. We give him one. But first, we need a witness. Someone who was in that hospital room. Someone who heard him say he didn't want them." Rose wiped her eyes. There was no one. Just the nurses. Wait. She remembered something. A small detail. "The heart monitor," she said. "The room. It was a VIP suite. Davis insisted on the platinum package because he wanted to record the birth for his social media, but he arrived too late." "So?" "The camera," Rose said, her eyes widening. "The hospital mounts a camera in the corner for the platinum patients to live stream the birth to family. Davis turned it on when he walked in, thinking he'd record a proud father moment for Instagram. But then he got distracted by the divorce papers." Arthur's eyebrows shot up. "Did he turn it off?" I don't know. But the system records to the cloud automatically." "If that recording exists," Arthur said, "it proves he committed perjury in his affidavit. It proves he abandoned them." "We need to get to Mount Sinai," Rose said, grabbing her purse, "before Davis realizes he left the evidence behind." "You stay here," Arthur commanded. "If you leave, you look like you're fleeing. I will send my team. You need to go home and stall. Don't hand over the children until the absolute last second." Rose arrived at the penthouse 20 minutes later. The atmosphere was tense. Sarah, the nanny, was crying. She had seen the news. "They're coming, aren't they?" Sarah asked, holding little Sophie. "Yes," Rose said, her voice trembling but determined. "But not for long." The doorbell rang. It wasn't the polite chime of a guest. It was a heavy, demanding press. Rose opened the door. Davis stood there, looking triumphant. Behind him were the police officers and Miles Thorne. "Time's up, Rose," Davis said. "Where are my children?" "They are sleeping," Rose said, blocking the doorway. "You can't just move 3 infants in the middle of a nap. It's disruptive." "I don't care," Davis snapped. "Officers, remove her." "Wait," a voice called out from the hallway. Arthur Clarke stepped off the elevator. He wasn't holding a briefcase this time. He was holding a USB drive. "Before you execute that custody order, officer," Arthur said calmly, addressing the police sergeant, "I believe there has been a significant development regarding the plaintiff's credibility." "Who are you?" Miles Thorne demanded. "We have a court order. And I have evidence of perjury, filing a false police report, and attempted fraud," Arthur said. He looked at Davis. "We found the hospital footage, Davis. The cloud never forgets." Davis's face went the color of ash. "That's illegal surveillance," Thorne shouted. "Actually," Arthur smiled, "Mr. Vance signed the consent form for the recording when he rented the suite. He just forgot to hit stop before he started threatening his wife." Arthur turned to the police officer. "I suggest you watch this video before you remove these children from their mother, unless you want to be named as accomplices in a kidnapping lawsuit." The officer hesitated. He looked at Davis, who was now sweating profusely. "Show me," the officer said. Arthur plugged the USB drive into the smart TV in the foyer. The video played. The quality was crystal clear. The screen showed Rose in the hospital bed. Davis walked in. He didn't hug her. He threw the papers. Audio. "Sign this, Rose," You've served your purpose. It's over. Audio. I need a power couple image, not a waitress from a diner in Ohio. Audio. You're a nobody with 3 anchors tied to her ankles. The silence in the penthouse hallway was deafening. The police officer looked at Davis with pure disgust. 3 anchors, huh? It's a deep fake, Davis stammered, backing away. AI generated. We have the metadata from the hospital servers, Arthur said. It's real. The officer turned to Davis. Mr. Vance, this court order was obtained based on your sworn statement that you were a loving father denied access. This video contradicts that directly. Officer, Rose said, stepping forward. I would like to file a restraining order, and I would like to press charges for perjury. Miles Thorne, realizing the ship was sinking, slowly backed away toward the elevator. I have to take a call, he muttered, and fled. Davis was left alone. The family man mask had slipped, and underneath there was nothing but a frightened, greedy little man. You can't do this to me, Davis whispered. I'm the CEO. Not for long, Rose said. The fall of Davis Vance was not a slow decline. It was a vertical drop. Within 2 hours of Arthur Clarke playing the hospital footage in the penthouse foyer, the video had been anonymously leaked to TMZ. By the time the sun set over Manhattan, the hashtag #3anchors was trending worldwide, not as a slogan of support, but as a symbol of scorn. Davis sat in the back seat of a black sedan, not his company car, but a hired ride, watching his life disintegrate on his phone screen. This is the most callous display of narcissism we've ever seen, a CNN anchor was saying, playing the clip where Davis called his newborns inventory. Vance Global stock has plummeted 14% in pre-market trading. The board of directors has called an emergency vote of no confidence. Davis threw his phone onto the seat. He was done. His lawyer, Miles Thorne, had already texted him a bill and a resignation letter. Isabella had blocked his number. He had no wife, no children, no mistress, and soon no job. But Davis still had one card to play. Or so he thought. He knew where the bodies were buried at Vance Global. If he was going down, he would burn the whole company to the ground. He ordered the driver to take him to the office. He needed to get to the server room and delete the Project Horizon files, the illegal offshore accounts he had set up to skim profits. He arrived at the Vance Global Tower at 8 p.m. The lobby was empty, save for the night security team. Davis marched toward the elevators, swiping his keycard. Beep, beep. A red light flashed. Access denied. What is this? Davis shouted, slamming the card against the reader. Hey, reset the system. He turned to the security desk. Tiny, the guard from the gala, was sitting there, arms crossed. System's fine, Mr. Vance, Tiny said, not bothering to stand up. Your credentials have been revoked. Revoked? I am the CEO. Not anymore. The elevator doors pinged open, but it wasn't empty. Rose stepped out. She was wearing a sharp white suit, a stark contrast to the hospital gown he had last seen her in when he discarded her. She looked immaculate, flanked by Arthur Clarke and 2 large men who looked like they ate concrete for breakfast. Rose, Davis snarled, walking toward her. You think you can lock me out of my own building? I built this place. You built a house of cards, Davis, Rose said, her voice echoing in the marble lobby. And I just opened a window. She signaled to Arthur. The lawyer stepped forward, handing Davis a single envelope. What's this? More divorce papers. Termination notice, Rose said. For cause. The board met an hour ago. The vote was unanimous. You're out. No severance. No golden parachute. And because we found the Project Horizon files you tried to hide on the encrypted drive, We've turned everything over to the SEC. Davis froze. You found Horizon? We own the servers, Davis, Rose said coldly. We see everything. You've been skimming from the company for 3 years. That's not just a firing offense. That's prison. Davis fell to his knees. It wasn't a theatrical gesture this time. His legs simply gave out. The reality of prison, real, federal prison, crashed down on him. Rose, please, he wept, grasping at the hem of her trousers. I'm the father of your children. Don't send me to jail. Think of the triplets. Do you want them to grow up knowing their dad is a convict? Rose looked down at him. Her face was unreadable. She didn't pull away, but she didn't offer a hand. I am thinking of them, she said softly. I'm making sure the man who called them anchors can never drag them down again. She looked at Tiny. Escort Mr. Vance off the premises. If he returns, call the police. With pleasure, ma'am, Tiny said. He hoisted Davis up by his armpits and dragged him toward the revolving doors. Rose didn't watch him go. She turned back to the elevator. Come on, Arthur. We have a company to rebuild. 3 months later, Vance Global was unrecognizable. It had been rebranded as Harrington Vance Logistics. The stock had rebounded and hit an all-time high after Rose announced a massive profit-sharing initiative for the employees. She was being hailed as the new queen of industry by Forbes. Life in the penthouse had settled into a rhythm. The triplets, Leo, Noah, and Sophie, were thriving. They were chubby, happy babies who had no idea their father was currently awaiting trial on 12 counts of fraud and embezzlement. It was a Tuesday evening. Rose was in her home office, reviewing the blueprints for a new sustainable shipping fleet. The city lights twinkled below, a reminder of how far she had come. She felt safe. She felt victorious. The intercom on her desk buzzed. Ma'am? It was the concierge from the lobby. Yes, Henry. There is a gentleman here to see you. He says he has an appointment. A Mr. Julian Blackwood. Rose frowned. She checked her calendar. I don't have anyone named Blackwood on my schedule. Tell him to call my assistant in the morning. I told him that, ma'am. But he insists. He says it concerns your mother. He says he has something that belongs to you. Rose's heart skipped a beat. Her mother. The topic was a closed book. Her mother had died when she was a baby, an orphan with no family. That was the story. Send him up, Rose said, against her better judgment. 5 minutes later, the elevator doors opened. Julian Blackwood walked in. He was an older man, perhaps in his late 60s, with silver hair and a cane topped with a silver wolf's head. He was dressed in a suit that looked older than Rose, but impeccably tailored. He had the air of a man who had seen empires rise and fall. Lady Rose, he said, bowing slightly. His voice was gravelly, with a faint European accent. Mr. Blackwood, Rose said, standing behind her desk. She didn't offer him a seat. You have 5 minutes. What about my mother? Julian smiled. It was a sad, weary smile. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, velvet-wrapped object. He placed it on the desk. Lord Harrington was a brilliant man, Julian said, but he was also a man of secrets. He told you that he lost track of your mother, that she ran away. Yes, Rose said. She fell in love with an American artist. My grandfather disapproved. That is the official story, Julian said. The truth is far darker. He tapped the velvet object. Your mother didn't run away, Rose. She was paid to leave. By me. Rose felt a chill run down her spine. Who are you? I was your grandfather's fixer long before Arthur Clarke came along, Julian said. I handled the problems. Your father, the artist. He wasn't just an artist. He was a rival, a corporate spy sent to infiltrate the Harrington family. Rose gasped. That's a lie. Is it? Julian unwrapped the object. It was an old dictaphone, a tape recorder from the 90s. Your mother found out, Julian continued. She found out your father was using her. She tried to flee, not from your grandfather, but from your father. The car crash that killed her? It wasn't an accident. Your father cut the brake lines. He meant to kill her and you. Rose gripped the edge of the desk. The room was spinning. Why are you telling me this now? She whispered. Because, Julian said, his eyes hardening. Your father didn't die in that crash. He survived. He disappeared. For 30 years he has been waiting, watching. Julian pointed to the window, to the vast skyline of New York. He knows you have the inheritance now. He knows the Harrington fortune is finally in the hands of the daughter he tried to kill. And he's coming, Rose. Who is he? Rose demanded. What is his name? Julian looked at her with pity. You know him, Julian said. Or rather, you know his work. He goes by many names, but in the business world, he is known as the silent partner, the man who funded Davis Vance's defense team this morning. Rose's blood ran cold. He's helping Davis? He's using Davis, Julian corrected. Just like he used your mother. Davis is out on bail, Rose. Your father posted the bond an hour ago. $50 million, cash. The intercom buzzed again. Mum? The concierge's voice was panicked. Security breach in the garage. Someone just drove a truck through the gate. Rose looked at Julian. He's here, Julian said, gripping his cane. The wolf is at the door. The penthouse alarm shattered the night, a piercing shriek that signaled a perimeter breach. Secure the nursery, Rose screamed, sprinting down the hallway. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Inside the nursery, Sarah, the nanny, was frozen in terror. Rose didn't hesitate. She grabbed 2 of the carriers while Sarah grabbed the 3rd. They rushed into the master suite, straight for the walk-in closet. It wasn't just a closet. It was a panic room lined with Kevlar and steel, a legacy of Lord Harrington's paranoia. Lock it, Rose ordered, shoving them inside. Don't open this door unless you hear my voice. Mom, come inside, Sarah cried. I can't, Rose said, her eyes cold. If I hide, they'll burn the place down to get to us. I have to draw them away. She sealed the door. Rose turned to the hidden safe behind a painting. She placed her palm on the scanner. It beeped, revealing not a gun, but a heavy industrial flare launcher meant for maritime distress. She gripped it tight. A massive crash echoed from the living room. Rose stepped out onto the mezzanine balcony. Below, the living room was a wreck. Standing amidst the shattered Ming vases were 2 men. Davis Vance looked manic, waving a pistol, his designer suit torn. Beside him stood Silas Vane. The man Rose now knew was her father. He wore a long trench coat and held a silver-topped cane, looking around with the cold precision of a shark. "Rose!" Davis screamed. "Come out! Give me the voting rights!" "Quiet, you fool!" Silas hissed. He looked up, locking eyes with Rose. "Hello, daughter. You look just like your mother. Before she betrayed me." Rose descended the stairs slowly. "So you're the ghost story, the man who cut the brakes on my mother's car." "I am the architect of your life," Silas replied smoothly. "I pushed Davis toward you. I needed a Harrington heir. Davis was just the vessel, greedy enough to take the bait, stupid enough to discard you, so I could step in." Davis froze. "What? You said we were partners. You said I'd get the company." Silas laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "There is no we, Davis. You are a failure facing prison. My grandchildren don't need a convict for a father. They need a visionary. I paid your bail, Davis shouted, raising his gun at Silas. I'm killing you. Then I'm taking the kids. Phut-phut. 2 suppressed shots coughed from Silas's coat pocket. Davis's eyes went wide. He looked down at the blooming red stains on his chest. He collapsed forward, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. The CIO of Vance Global was dead. Silas stepped over the body without blinking. He aimed his smoking pistol at Rose. Now, Silas said, bring me the children, or you die next. Rose stood on the Harrington family crest rug, 10 feet away. She didn't flinch. You forgot one thing about this family, Father, she said softly. We don't just collect art, we protect it. Meaning, catch. Rose whipped the flare launcher from behind her back. She didn't aim at him. She aimed straight up at the vaulted ceiling. Boom! The flare exploded into the sensor cluster. Instantly, the room hissed violently. The penthouse wasn't equipped with water sprinklers, which would ruin the paintings. It was equipped with a halon fire suppression system. Massive vents slammed open, flooding the room with heavy, colorless gas that displaced oxygen instantly to starve a fire. Silas gasped, clutching his throat. He fired a wild shot that shattered a window, but the air was already gone. It was like drowning on dry land. Rose had taken a massive breath before firing. She spun around, grabbed a brass sculpture, and smashed the glass of the terrace door. She dove through onto the balcony, rolling into the cold night air, gasping for oxygen. Inside, Silas Vane dropped to his knees. He clawed at the glass, his face turning purple, staring at Rose with bulging eyes. He collapsed next to Davis, his hand twitching once before going still. The wolf was dead. 6 months later, the Mediterranean sun warmed the deck of the superyacht the Triad. Rose sat on a lounge chair, watching Leo, Noah, and Sophie toddle across the teak deck, chased by a laughing Sarah. Arthur Clarke sat across from her, pouring iced tea. The police report is closed, he said. Self-defense. Silas was wanted by Interpol. The world is better off. I didn't do it for the world, Rose said, looking at her children. I did it for them. And the company? Rebranded, Rose smiled. Harrington Logistics launches tomorrow. New board, new vision, and a new rule. No family members on the payroll unless they earn it. She took off her sunglasses and looked directly into the camera lens, her gaze fierce and victorious. Davis thought I was weak because I was a mother. Silas thought I was weak because I was a woman. They both learned the same lesson. There is nothing more dangerous than a mother protecting her young. If you come for my family, you better not miss. And that is the story of Rose Vance. She went from a discarded wife to a billionaire CEO, taking down a corrupt husband and a murderous father along the way. She proved that success and survival is the best revenge. What did you think of that ending? Did Silas deserve a slower fate? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next drama. Thanks for watching.